Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Welcome back, friends. Welcome to another video lecture from Kami Biology. In a series of video, we are going to talk about the antibiotic drugs in a detail. The drugs, the mechanism of action, resistance, side effect of these drugs in a detail. Fine. Antibacterial spectrum also. Now, this is the first video lecture regarding with antibiotic, and in this video lecture, I am going to talk about the basic overview or the big picture or abstract or summary of the antibiotic. Fine. So now let me write. Antibiotic overview. Fine. Now the drugs, now here the question arises in our mind that what is antibiotic? Antibiotic, the anti means against. Anti means what? Anti means against. Biotic means life. So here life means that bacteria. We usually select bacteria. Bacteria. Fine. So antibiotic are those agents which are used to kill bacteria or stop to growth or division of the bacteria. So now let me write. Those agents that kill or stop bacterial division. Fine. So whenever the antibiotic which are used to kill the bacteria, means here the words means to kill the bacteria, kill. So usually we call that bactericidal. We call that bactericidal. When the antibiotic is used to kill the bacteria, we usually call it bactericidal. And when the antibiotic used to stop the bacterial division, we usually call that bacteriostatic. Bacteriostatic. Fine. Means that how this antibiotic can kill the bacteria. The antibiotic can kill the bacteria when the antibiotic interfere with the cell wall, or whenever they stop the synthesis of the cell wall. So when the cell wall synthesis are halted or stopped by the antibiotics, then the bacterial cell have no more longer life. So in this way the bacterial cell will be burst and all the content will be released out. Now here what does bacteriostatic means? In bacteriostatic, the antibiotic are usually targeted the replication process of the DNA. They can halted the protein synthesis, and they can also halted the metabolic pathway, or we can say folic acid synthesis. They will also halted these. So once these things are halted, so then the bacteria will not divide or not grow, and we call these antibiotic bacteriostatic. Fine. And the bacteria will be in a static condition. So that's all about a little bit introduction to bacteriostatic and bactericidal. So whenever we want to discuss the antibiotic basic overview, so here I will draw the diagram. Within means I will draw the cell bacterial cell diagram, and within this diagram I will target those area where the drugs are usually affected. Fine. So here I will draw the diagram in a rough form. Fine. So how the bacteria will be look like? So let's suppose this blue area. Let's suppose this blue area represents what? So let's suppose this blue area represents the bacterial cell wall. Fine. So this blue area represents the bacterial cell wall. This red one. This red one represents the bacterial cell membrane, because bacteria have cell wall and cell membrane. Now the drugs which are used, this is the cell wall. Fine. So the drugs which are used to inhibit the cell wall, we usually call cell wall synthesis inhibitor. Now the drugs which are used to inhibit the cell wall synthesis, we usually call that beta-lactam antibiotic. Beta-lactam antibiotic. And these beta-lactam antibiotic have a beta-lactam ring. How it will be look like, we'll be talking in the next video lecture in a detail. The beta-lactam antibiotic, usually we have the first name we call that penicillin. Penicillin. Second name is cephalosporin. Cephalosporin. Third we have the carbaphenems. Fourth we have monobactam. Now the mechanism of action of these drugs are similar but a little bit different. We'll be talking in our next video lecture. Find their mechanism of action, resistance and adverse effect, and their antibacterial property. We'll be talking in our next video lecture. There are some other antibiotics which are also interfere with the cell wall, but we not call that it is beta-lactam antibiotic. Actually, it is not related with the beta-lactam antibiotic. We call that vancomycin. So they can also interfere with the cell wall, and we call that vancomycin. Why we not include it with the beta-lactam? Because it is not related with beta-lactam. First thing, and the second thing is that their mechanism of action is also different with the rest of these beta-lactam antibiotic. But their mechanism of action will be talking in our next video lecture. So this is the cell wall inhibitor drugs. Now there are some other reason that antibiotic can target it, and we call that cell membrane. Sorry, not cell wall, cell membrane. This red one represents the cell membrane. Cell membrane. So the drugs or the antibiotic which can interfere with the cell membrane, we usually call that polymyxin. Polymyxins. So this is another antibiotic. These antibiotics, as I draw outside of the bacterial cell, these are usually bactericidal because they can kill the bacteria. This cell membrane and this cell wall actually give support to the bacteria, and they give shape to the bacteria. If the bacteria support and shape are disturbed by giving these antibiotic, so the bacteria will no more longer, and the bacteria will similarly burst bacterial cell, and in this way all the content will be released out. So that's all about the bactericidal. Now let me talk the other drugs which are interfere with the nucleic acid. We usually call it nucleic acid inhibitor. So let me write nucleic acid inhibitor. So the drugs which are used to the drugs which are interfere with nucleic acid inhibitor. Let's suppose in this case we usually take the DNA. So this is the DNA, and let's suppose we call that it is nucleic acid. Let's suppose so. Usually the antibiotic will interfere with this, and the antibiotic which are used in nucleic acid inhibitor, we usually call that quinolones. Maybe the spelling is right or wrong. Quinolones. Fine. Now these quinolones will interfere with the DNA gyrase. They will interfere with DNA gyrase. And once they interfere with DNA gyrase, so the DNA replication will be not occur. How these process will be occur? What are the mechanism of action? We'll be talking in a next video lecture in a detail. So they will just interfere with their DNA gyrase. There are other antibiotic which are used in nucleic acid. We usually call that rifampicin. Rifampicin, and this rifampicin will usually interfere with the RNA polymerase. Fine. So this is another. So these are another antibiotics. Now there are some other antibiotics which can interfere to stop the protein synthesis. So let me write protein synthesis inhibitor. Protein synthesis inhibitor. So the drugs which are used to stop the protein synthesis, there are usually two drugs. The first drugs will interfere with the 50S subunit of ribosome, and the next will interfere with the 30S ribosome, 30S subunit of ribosome. Fine. Ribosome. Now when 50S and 30S are combined together, then they make 70S. Although when we add it, it is 80, but usually we call that it is 70S. Fine. Now this is the, so the drugs which are used to interfere with 50S subunit, we usually call that macrolides, clindamycin, chloramphenicol, lenzolide. So let me write lenzolide. Now the drugs which are used to the drugs which interfere with 30S ribosomes, we usually call that tetracycline, second aminoglycosides, Fine. So these are the other drugs. These drugs are usually bacteriostatic, but some of them are bactericidal. We'll be talking in our next video lecture. Fine. So these are the protein synthesis inhibitor drugs. Now there are some other drugs which are usually used to inhibit the folate synthesis or the metabolic synthesis. These folate and metabolic synthesis means bacteria use this for some purposes. We'll be talking in our next video lecture. So the drugs which are usually used, so let me write here, actually folate synthesis and all these synthesis will be occur inside the bacterial cell. So here there is no space that I will write here, so I will write here in this area. So the drugs which are used to in metabolic synthesis, in metabolic or folate synthesis inhibitor, we usually call that the first drug name is sulfonamides, and the second drug is trimethoprim. Fine. So these all about the antibiotic basic overview, and these are the antibiotics which are usually targeted to these sites of the bacteria. Inshallah, in our next videos, we are going to talk about the cell wall synthesis inhibitor, the drugs which are used in the cell wall synthesis inhibitor, the mechanism of action of these drugs, resistance which are activated against these drugs, side effect of these drugs, and antibacterial spectrum of these drugs. Fine, in a detail. So inshallah, in the next video we are going to talk about these drugs. So stay tuned and continue to watch. Thank you so much.